Well, I think that was an amazing session. And it's going to be tough to keep up the energy, but we are going to try our best. I am Pratim Bhosale, developer advocate at SurrealDB. And this is Micha, Chief Burger Officer at SurrealDB. Micha, would you like to give a quick introduction about yourself?
Yes, hey everyone, thank you for coming. I'm Micha, I'm a software engineer at SurrealDB, and it's great to have you all here. And yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. So good afternoon, everyone, first of all. I hope you all are having a great time so far. With all the new features announced, I'm sure everyone is curious about its implementation and execution. What you see on the screen right now will be the Surreal Stickies application. Yes, Surreal Stickies, a not-so-basic notes app capable of clarifying how some of the features that we have discussed today work in reality. On Surreal Stickies, you can sign up to your account, create a new sticky, assign some tags, along with the usual CRUD application functions that you can do. We will now start with the SurrealQL schema for the application, then build out the scope authentication. We will also see how graph edges work and how strongly you can type them. And finally, we will then end it with live queries to get real-time updates from the front end. After the demo, we will be joined by the founders, Jaime and Tobie, to answer all your questions around the amazing conference that we've had today and also the live session that we're going to do today. And as mentioned, my amazing colleague, who is the SurrealQL expert, will be building out all the features live in front of us. And yeah, we're going to first start with defining a schema. With defining a schemaful table for our users. We are going to add permissions to this table. So we are adding permissions so that our users are allowed to select, update, delete their own accounts. Next, we are going to add a field to store the name of our users with, let's take for a minimum of length of 2 characters. Yep. Then we're also going to add a username to each of the users, which can be used to sign into their accounts. The interesting thing is, here we make use of the value clause to automatically make every character lowercase. To verify the identity of our user upon signing in, we're going to set a password for them. Nobody can select the password, but our user is able to update it if they desire so. As with most table definition, you usually want a resource that was created and updated. Let's toss that in as well. You can see that we make a combination of value clause and default clause to make this work. We never want the created field to change after the creation. This can simply be done by setting the value to either the previous value or the current time if no value previously existed for the field. As for the updated field, we simply always force it to give the current time. The value clause is only evaluated when a record is created or updated. We make sure we don't have any duplicate users with a unique index. And lastly, once a user is removed, we can simply use an event to make sure that all of their linked resources are also removed from the database. As for the stickies, we once again define a schemaful table. This time, we allow any user to create a sticky, and the user can only select, update, or delete the existing stickies if they are the author. Well, every sticky has some content in it, though it can also be empty by default. We are also going to add in some color. So every sticky has a color, which can either be pink because, well, pink is our favorite color, or purple. Lastly, We use the same logic as from the user table to know when a sticky was created and last updated. Now, for the fun part, we are going to talk about scope authentication. Here we define a scope which will last for 7 days after you have signed in. As for the scope sign-in method, we essentially select all fields from the user table where the username matches and where the provided password checks out against the stored hash. Well, we are currently working on setting the color of the sticky.
Just rounding it off real quick.
After we are done with setting up the auth details, we are going to move ahead and see how we can use the username and password variables. So we first decided that the scope session is going to be for 7 days. And then we add in the sign-in and also the sign-out details. If you notice here, we are using the hash function. Your sign-in function can consist of the name, username, and all details that you want your details to have. Cool. I think we are now done. We've built the crypto functions. We've built the hash password. And now we're going to move ahead to the next part. Let's go ahead. Let's talk about graph relations now. Are we all set to talk about graph relations?
1 second. I just realized I took out my bottom bar to switch the branch. So.
Well, we have to pray that the demo gods are with us today.
There we go, that one. Boom.
Good. Well, yeah. I just said the concept graph relations and something had to go up. Graphs are a very powerful way to link two pieces of data together. Now we love strict typing. So let's see how we can combine the two together. Are we ready, Micha?
Yeah.
We define a schemaful table to store our relations. Now we don't want people to start linking their tags to other people's stickies. So we can get some permissions to prevent such a thing from happening. The in and out fields store record IDs, which then represent the record as a whole. This is really powerful. Let's see why. As we can directly select fields from that remote document. Here we ensure that the owner of the tag represented by the in field is the authenticated user, and we do the same for the author of the sticky represented by the out field. For you to notice is the in field and the out field and things that they represent here. To make sure that the in and the out fields do actually represent a tag and sticky respectively, we can add in field definitions strongly typed to the tag and sticky records. And the usual drill when this relation was created and last updated. So we're going to add the basic details about last created and last updated. Cool. Now, this is going to be interesting. We're going to talk about tags, and we are first going to see the schema of tags. I'm done explaining. I think, Micha, it's time for you to explain things now.
That's all right. There we go. Let's see it. So I've already written up the tag schema. Otherwise, it's a bit much schema writing, you know. So basically, we have a table for our tags. Any scope user can create a tag, and any user who owns a tag can either select it, update it, or delete it. Every tag has a name, or so the name of the tag, and we want it to, you know, be at least 1 character long. So, and every tag has an owner. As with all the other tables, we also want to know when this tag was created and updated, and we want to, basically when the tag is removed, we also want to remove every relation between the tag and the sticky.
Yes. Well, now to top it off, we would like to add some real-time updates to our application. You might think this is going to be a complicated task, but actually, surprisingly, it is pretty easy. You all had a quick demo of a quick understanding of this in the previous keynote that was there, but let's see how it works. So we are going to use live queries, and the syntax is pretty self-explanatory. Let's see how this works. What we are going to do is we're going to use this live method in the JS library to initiate a live query. The syntax for live queries is pretty much easy, and you can see it on the screens. That's all you need to have real-time updates and notifications from your application. And once Micha is done, we are going to move to the next part. So we are currently building all the different functions that we need in our live updates. We pass it to a generic type to indicate what type of data will be returned. We filter out the create and update action, which we later merge into our front-end store of stickies. We will also filter out the delete action to remove queries from the store. Cool. And I think that's all there is to implement, right? Yeah, that's all there is to implement live queries for real-time updates in your application. And now that live queries are implemented, let's see if this really works. Let's hope, please pray to the demo gods that this works.
I'll just sign out, you know.
Yeah.
So we can basically sign into our account here, or we can create a new account as well. And, well, I already have some stickies here, but we can create a new sticky. We can add some content to it. If we want to, we can add some text to it. But what we can also do, and let me just duplicate this.
See how the live queries work?
Yeah, live queries, absolutely. So basically, we can just create a new sticky, and it doesn't work. That's amazing. Oh, there we go. It came.
Ooh.
It came along. It took some time. It's fine. Boom, there we go.
Well, and just like that, we are to the end of the Stickies application. It's ready for you to check it out. We have a blog written for the basic CRUD applications. We will be sharing an updated blog with these features out there for you to test out. And now I'm going to invite Tobie and Jaime to answer all your questions regarding this application or whatever we have spoken and shared with you today. Okay, I think this is a game of volleyball then today.
Go for it.
You do it.
Do it.
No, I'm going to let Jaime do this. I don't want anyone going injured back.
Boom.
Whoa, that was a good one.
Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate all the SurrealDB team. You guys have worked very hard, and it's a really big thing. And so my question is simply that I see, and that's the reason that piqued my interest in SurrealDB, is that there are so many features, like the best of all the worlds I can see in SurrealDB. And that kind of bothers me that it is doing way too much. And how are you guys going to like focus so that you can nail one use case and take it as a commercial success, just not like a technical big thing?
Yeah, good question. Who wants to answer that?
This is a very original question, right? We never get asked this question.
Yeah, exactly. We get asked that a lot. And yeah, there's a lot of functionality in SurrealDB. I think, importantly, it solves... your question comes in two parts, right? It comes in the part of the tech, what problem are we actually solving? And it comes in the part of sales and marketing. What are we trying to do? So the sales and the marketing I'll leave out for the moment. I'll just focus on the tech. SurrealDB solves problems in different ways for different people. And because of its flexibility, and because you can run it embedded or single node or distributed, and because of the different functionality within the database that you can benefit from, some people may just use document, some people use relations. It can solve many different problems. Now, importantly, there are always going to be problems that we don't try to solve. There are issues on our GitHub that unfortunately are not going to be implemented because to do that would mean affecting the performance or affecting the entire rest of the platform, the ecosystem, as it were. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to build the database that we want to build with the features that we want to have without affecting that performance in the long term. So SurrealQL is a big part of that. SurrealQL enables us to do everything we're doing. And a lot of the functionality that you see built into the database is just a kind of manifestation of the query language. It's that query language that gives the functionality, that gives that power. I think because we've chosen to separate out that storage from the compute layer, it means that we can focus on those two problems separately and individually. So we can focus on, at the moment we're using TyKV, FoundationDB, RocksDB to run that storage layer, and in the future that would be SurrealKV. But that's a problem we can solve independently of SurrealDB compute and query node sitting on top. Because of that, we can offer that functionality because it's just operating in a single way, which is how do you do computation, how do you do querying well, effectively and efficiently. So to answer your question, we want SurrealDB to solve many users and developers' needs. You don't look at Postgres or MongoDB and say, well, they just do one thing. They do things in a way that developers need, and that's why developers choose them. For SurrealDB, there are many different ways you can use it, but importantly, we want to have that performance and the characteristics and what you expect from the database to be similar regardless of how you use it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
This is a game of volleyball now.
So I had a question around more of a feature question, I guess. What I wanted to understand, so I was going through the documentation and I realized there's a lot of support for basic types, but I wanted to understand if you guys are thinking of adding support for types like JSON, XML, or maybe having indexes on those types as well, like a XML index or a JSON index. Is that something that you think is within the scope of the product, or is that going too far wide and just trying to solve for everything, which was sort of the first question as well?
Could you elaborate on JSON? What you mean
JSON is a data type for, let's say, a row that you've created. Is that something that you guys are thinking of?
Okay, so just to begin with, XML will not be supported by SurrealDB. SurrealQL is a superset of JSON, effectively, right? It has computed and uncomputed types, it has futures, it has functions, but everything effectively almost comes down to a JSON type at the end of the day. Because of that, we also have objects, arrays, nested values. So we don't have a JSON type as such, but those basic types, which were introduced in SurrealDB version 1, are going to form the basis of more advanced types going forward. So there's an issue on our GitHub created by the community, which is about domains. I think that's what they call them in MySQL. And domains are effectively an object type. Now in SurrealDB or SurrealQL, you've got that because we have the nested object, because we're a document database as well, similar to MongoDB, you've got that ability to store nested objects, nested fields, nested arrays, and everything on top of that. So definitely plans to improve the typing, and not so much the typing of how you store data. You can really store that data. It's really around the developer experience of how you define that you want that data to be stored. We've definitely got plans to improve on that. But in terms of, we do have other internal RFCs around improving the query language as well. We've had suggestions internally on adding enum types and closures so that it's turning more into a programming language. But definitely, you can already do a lot of that already with SurrealQL, and yeah, but we're still going to be improving some of that functionality too.
Thanks for answering the question.
You can always contribute and put in an issue in PR, and we'd be happy to support through that. Yes, please.
Thank you for the day, by the way, very exciting. Mainly the ML part, where we have on the one hand the vectorization index, which is really cool, and that also is being used by the ML part. So what I'm wondering is there going to be support for actually vectorizing data, like not only text but also binaries like PDFs and video and images and stuff like that?
Yeah.
And therefore also how to go about storing these binaries, because in distributed systems that's always a problem. So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, that last part of the question is a bigger topic, isn't it? I'll come on to that. If you can either integrate models, machine learning, large language models into your platform in an opinionated way or an unopinionated way. Initially, when I was thinking about how we would do this, we were going to be very opinionated about it. We were going to do training inside the database, and that would have been great. It would have been super simple, but it also would have locked down what developers could do outside of the functionality that we offer. It was actually talking to Maxwell, who, if you saw his talk, part 2 of bringing intelligence to the database. He was saying, look, people are just trying to solve this problem of how do they infer at scale, with versioning, with consistency, with reproducibility. And he was basically saying, look, we bring a model into the database, and that enables people to do their logic outside. They can still use the tools, the pipelines, the programming languages that they use to train their models, however they want to do that. But then they can simplify the inference against their data. And that's what we specialize in, right? We want to specialize in data. And we want to make it easy for developers, to build and query and run and infer and do anything with that data. We don't want to dictate how you do your machine learning, your training, your learning, everything around that side. So by integrating ML in an unopinionated way, we enable developers it opens up that possibility of what developers can do, because now they can use their own frameworks, their own pipelines, and bring that into the database and use the result on the data. The second part of your question, which is to do with object storage, that's a much bigger question. It's always a hard one, right? Operating on a single node with SurrealDB, you have a value size which is limited to 2 gigabytes. You take that into a distributed context with FoundationDB or TypeKV, you have a value size which is limited to 8 megabytes. Very big difference. And that's so that it can scale. That's so that if you want that highly available, highly scalable nature of a distributed platform, it doesn't have the performance negative aspects when you put more data into it. So that's always something we have to bear in mind. As we go forward, there are requests on our GitHub again to do with, can I store files in the database? Not right now, but this is obviously a problem that developers want solved. Yes, there's things like S3, and that's perfect for situations. But when you've got S3 and Google Cloud Storage, and you have CDNs and CloudFront sitting in front, and you can do signed URLs to get people access to certain files. But actually, if you've got permissions and authentication layer built right into the database, and you've got your data there, and that all works brilliantly and simply, but now you want to store files, but you have to do that elsewhere. That's an issue. So that's something we hopefully can solve in the future, but it's a bit, you're putting 2 different types of storage together. You're putting storage of, cold storage of larger files, and you're putting hot storage of smaller files in the database together, and that's always a hard thing to do. So that's a question for the future, I guess.
Hey,
some
just
really
wondered,
good-
how many people do you know that are already running this in production, and kind of what feedback have you got from that?
Yeah, production is a, people are running us in pre-production, definitely. I think before we got to version 1, there's always the hesitancy that, oh, it's going to change, or there's going to be things that are going to break our application as we build on this. So there are definitely people who are building against this, who are building, I think some people are building in production, but going forward from version 1, this is stable. We've stabilized the storage, and now every time we do an update, if we introduce something else internally into the database, then that increases the storage revision of that piece of data, and that means that it's not backwards breaking change. That's actually an open source library. If you're a Rust developer, you can use that yourselves. In addition, the API, we're going to be adding to this database with more improvements and functionality, but we're not really changing anything from a backwards perspective. So going forward now, you can start building production-ready applications on here with the mind that we're working on performance and improvements over the next few months as well. Up until that, yeah, to answer that question, there are people running in production. Yep. Most people, I'd say, are running up to pre-production up until this point.
We've had people, running in production a week after we launched, which we couldn't really believe, to be honest. We've got 30-50s already using it in production worldwide for global authentication. So yeah, a lot of people are using it and looking forward to that sort of version 1 now as that label to use moving forward.
Oh, it's just passing,
That's a big
passing the pass.
I have a question. I see as a theme a little bit here that we are moving code towards the database a little bit. And for that, it would make sense to me if there would be user-defined functions. Is that on the roadmap?
Yeah, so user-defined functions in terms of in the database or bringing in from outside the database?
So I mean like defining code, probably like in WebAssembly, something like that, that you can deploy to the database and then it will run where it needs to run.
Yeah, why wouldn't you want to do a 1,000-line stored procedure is my question to you on that.
That's the best one.
Yeah, definitely. Look, this is, we introduced custom functions into the database. Those custom functions have permissions. We know that's great for some small use cases, maybe if you're doing a little bit of business logic in the database, but we don't want to go into down that world where people are running entire applications in the stored procedures. So yeah, we do want to improve that going forward. It didn't make version 1, but we do have plans to improve that. Similar functionality to how you see around the machine learning models. So versioning of those files, being able to call those functions at any version, and those models becoming a function in itself in the query language. That's really important. It's going to work very similarly.
Thanks.
So I guess a lot of applications can already be developed with the features you have. But asking to you as a data expert, is there on the roadmap of SurrealDB the support for example, namespaced attributes to basically integrate directly with the vision of the semantic web, so that every attribute is uniquely identifiable at the global level? I'm talking, I'm thinking about RDF and basically a web of data where every attribute is uniquely identified. Is there on the roadmap to have support for this kind of data representation?
Yeah, it's, I'd say when building this, we had to choose, right? You have to choose between building a graph database that is just focused on very strict semantics, or building something that's more flexible. And we opted for the first route. If you look at things like Sparkle and things like that, they can be very slow. They're very strict, and you can guarantee relationships and definition of that data, but they have their issues as well because that is a problem. So we've opted for the more flexible nature. But when we launched in August last year, there was no strict typing at all. Everything could become something else. You could have a null and it could become a true and a number and then a decimal. And the community didn't like that, so I was overruled. And I think I was going down the JavaScript route too much. And nowadays you have a strict typing system. So as we go forward in time, we want to support better migrations of data models. Now, to say that is RDF would be wrong. But I think stricter models, stricter types, and then migrations of those types enables you as a developer to put your schema on the different tables or the different types of data, and then reason between those in a similar way to how you would with RDF. So is it the same as RDF where everything is stored separately, every relationship, every property is stored separately? No, it's not going to be that because of the way we built it, which for specific reasons, but it will, and where we want to get to is improving that so that the process of schema definition, migration of those schemas is much improved and will enable you to do something similar. And I love that world, that world of RDF where you can reason about something else over there based on the relationships here. It's so powerful, and that's something we want to strive towards, I guess.
And on Tobie's point about being overruled, it's very important, right? We are not a closed company. We're not blinkered. We love our community. We love your suggestions, and we listen to your advice, right? We don't know it all. Anyone who says they do, they don't. So, yeah, please overrule Tobie more often if you think it's the wrong direction we're going down, because we'll listen to you and we'll love your feedback. So, thank you for that.
Sorry, I had a more business sort of question, with not exactly a technical question. So I used to work earlier for Azure SQL, which is Microsoft's relational database. I sort of wanted to understand what's the business decision regarding open sourcing the database code. I'm just trying to understand in terms of just pure business sense, how does that make, it makes sense code-wise, community-wise, and all of that. But if you just look at it from a business perspective, how does that make sense? I know CockroachDB also does this. Yeah, just sort of trying to understand that mindset and how that sort of works. Yeah, that's probably the question.
I never wanted to touch on opinionated topics, but I guess you can never get away from the license. If you look at other databases, you often have an enterprise version that has the latest patches, and it's often closed source unless you're paying a lot of money. Then you've got a open core or a closed core open layered top bit that can only scale to 5 nodes, because if you're above 5 nodes or if you're above 2 gigabytes of data, you're considered enterprise. And then you've got the community edition that no one wants to be on, right? And that's open source, and they're an open source database. And what is the definition of open source? Is the definition of open source what the OSI said is, which is you cannot limit it anyway, okay? We limit our license in only one way, which is you can't build a database as a service where you're charging users to sign up and store their data in the database. But what that means for us is that means we can actually make a success out of this business so that we can continue building the product for developers, but at the same time enable developers to still build on this for free if they want to, and enterprises. You can be running a 1,000 node database cluster, but if you are, please let us know, that'd be awesome. But you could be running a 1,000 node database cluster without having to talk to us, without having to talk to support, without having to pay us, and without having to upgrade to an enterprise license. And it's, we could have gone the enterprise route and the open core route and the community version, but it makes it much simpler from a perspective of, what do I get? As a developer, you can use this product, and you know exactly what you can and can't do. And most people, 99.999% of people don't want to run a database as a service as a business. So for them, they want to build applications against it. We limit that in no way, whether you're a big enterprise, whether you're an indie hacker, whether you're a startup, whether you're running this on millions of devices or just one. And that is, there's always going to be opinions on that, and we can never get away from that. But you've also got to look at businesses that have been open source, that have suddenly gone closed source. I'm not going to name names. And you can also look at businesses that have been open sourced, brilliant businesses, RethinkDB, that didn't make it. And now they're contributed to by the community, but they're not backed by an organization. What would they rather want? Do they want to have a database that limits really not many people, let's say 3 to 5 companies in the world? Or do they want a database that is available but may not be in a few years' time because open source is a very risky area? And that's the decision we came to. But we're, again, as Jamie said, we're always open to suggestions and thoughts and everything like that. But that's our thought behind it.
When we first launched, right, we did a post on Reddit, and the #1 comment was someone called me the devil child because of my license. And actually, I'm not going to name names, but they're one of our biggest users now because I explained to them, look, at some point, we want to take this company to where we want to take it to, right? We believe it's going to be the de facto database in the world. And you can use it as easy as you want to. You just can't run your own hosted cloud version of it. So, yeah, he's one of our biggest. I won't name names, but you know who you are. But yeah, that's the reason for it.
Oh, we have a lot of questions behind.
Do you want a big throw again? Shall I do a big throw? How you doing?
Let's not injure anyone.
Oh, jeez.
Oh my God. We do have a first
It's all right, we're insured.
involved.
We're insured. It's all right. It's okay. We're insured.
Yeah, so I'm actually running SurrealDB in a production. It's getting quite a lot of users, but it's like just a single node. So now the natural question is I want to scale beyond this one single node, which is a pretty big server, but it's still causing issues. So now I have like TiKV, I have FoundationDB, and I think there even was a third one. How do I decide which one of these 3 to use? Do you have like maybe some guidance or run some benchmarks, how specific with SurrealDB, which one of these would work best maybe for different use cases?
Yeah. So this is something we're working on internally. We're doing testing and benchmarking on these clusters, and we'll be releasing these results as we go forward. Regardless, I mean, there's also the depending on where you're running it, which company you're working at. If that's the case, there are obviously some things to take into account. TiKV is open source. It's under the Apache Cloud Native project, built by a Chinese company. FoundationDB is open sourced, but owned now by Apple. So there's always things to take into account. There are differences in terms of how transactions work on each of them as well. FoundationDB does not allow any transaction to last longer than 5 seconds. I think 4 or 5 seconds. So that has limits on what you can do in the database layer sitting on top of that. TiKV has those limits on writes, but is more flexible on reads, for instance. But yeah, we'll definitely be producing guides, deployment guides, more so looking forward to the next few months in terms of deploying on these in Kubernetes as well and in the different cloud providers, and also looking at the differences in terms of performance and benchmarking between the two. But as a developer, provided that, let's say, those are similar performance, as a developer, that choice is down to you with the different trade-offs with those underlying storage engines. Obviously, if SurrealKV existed, I'd say just use that, but it's not quite there yet. And
thanks so much for using SurrealDB in production. I'll get you some free swag in a bit as well for that, so thank you. Question in the back. There we go.
Lots
Hi.
of questions.
I'm curious, as co-founders, having arrived now at SurrealDB 1.0, just how does that relate to your initial vision for Surreal, way back when?
Jamie, would you like to
Sorry, I really
start
stumped
with
you there.
Thank you, Jack, for the question. Yeah, believe it or not, look, we're brothers. We don't look it. We worked together for 18 years. It's a love-hate relationship, mainly hate. But look, we're chalk and cheese. I mean, it's always worked. Tobie does the brilliant side of the database, and I do the front end, the brand and design, and the team. So, yeah, I think we've always wanted to build an amazing product that people love, right? And we think we've done that. I mean, it's very important that we built this back 8 years ago now. We started building it because we want to simplify our lives, right? We're building a complicated SaaS product using lots of different backends. And we thought, look, there's got to be something out there that can make our lives easier and save us money. And we could have done a 2-month hack, get it out there, and then raise and carry on building. But we thought, look, let's get it to a point where we are very happy with this before we launch to the world. And that's what we've done. And we've listened to all the advice. We've replied to every single comment pretty much when we first launched on Discord. And yeah, I've forgotten the question now, to be honest. It's been a long few weeks, but...
Have you stuck to the... What do you see about the vision since you started?
So I think from the perspective of the tech, I always had in my mind where we could go with the product. I have been inspired, it's probably obvious, if you know the different databases out there, I've been inspired by many different databases. You know, we have aggregate views which have come from CouchDB and Couchbase. We have the graph aspects which come from graph databases. There are concepts which are new, record IDs and things like that, and ranges, record range queries and stuff like that. But I think you set out with a vision, and I think you'd be stupid to say, or to tell yourself, I think everyone does tell themselves, I'll ignore that bit, but you'd be stupid to think that that vision was going to execute 100% the right way. When we launched in August last year, we had an incredible amount of feedback, incredible amount of community support, contributions, involvement, and that shapes your vision to a degree, right? You still have that vision, but it shapes it. I think the vision that hasn't changed is when I was using all of those different database platforms, when we were using those different databases in the business we were running, you know, coordinating and synchronizing changes between them and storing data in a duplicated way depending on time series or document or graph or relational. The vision that I had was, I need this to be simpler than this. And that vision hasn't changed. You know, we know that the vision that I had was build something incredibly simple that people can still use from a database perspective, not a layer, not an API, a database perspective, and in any way they want. And that vision hasn't changed. The vision along the way, strict types, JavaScript, things like this, that's definitely changed, and that's always going to be you know, influenced by the community and developers and the team members and everything, and that's great. The vision to be a database that's used widely, or if not one of the most widely used databases in the world, that hasn't changed.
We've got one last time for one last question. There's one right at the back there. Thank you.
Hi. Yeah, so a bit of a different one. There are some of us here, including myself, who are not in the techie coding world, and we're just kind of taking it all in and trying to understand this complex, or you know, it sounds very complex to us. If you had to explain what your database does, like to an 8-year-old, what would you say?
Micha, would you like to take that?
No, I came out wrong, but yeah, Micha.
So the way the way I explained it to my mom's not an 8-year-old, but a bit older, but that's fine. Basically, you've got a database, right? And you know, like how do you call this? People keep their finances in like the books with the grids, right? So you got the rows and the columns. That's basically what a database is in the most simple form. Huh?
An Excel sheet?
Yeah, thank you. But then like an actual paper one, because my mom doesn't know what Excel is. So, really, that's what it is in the most basic sense, right? And you can have multiple books, so you can have multiple tables, and you can, not really with paper, but maybe you can like pin sort of cord between two rows, but like in a database you can make relations between the different pieces of data, and that's really in the most basic form what a database is. But then this one is like a supercharged one with like authentication. You can read every book in like a split second with full text search. You can yeah.
Did that help you?
There's so much, yeah. To be honest.
I'm going to try a quick one from my side to give you another explanation. Imagine you're trying to build an application and you decide, okay, this is one database that everyone's is talking about. Let me just use it. You decide to use it, and you're building this application, and a point comes where you're putting images into the database. The images are getting structured. There's a lot of textual data coming in, and then you're like, okay, so this database can't handle this kind of data. Cool, I need another database. So you get another database, and then you come to another point, okay, this database can just handle caching. Cool, let me get to another database. And then you realize, when you're sitting back, I have 5 to 10 databases that I need for a single application. What would be an easier option for you? Just have one single database, just have one way of querying that database, and that will give you all the data you want in the way you want. That's what SurrealDB does. just removes all the noise and gives you a single way to transform all your data that's out there. Yes, please. We have, I think, can we take another question?
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
One more, yeah. Let's do it.
Sorry, hi, just building on that, and I happen to have a weird world. Half my foot's in your world and half my foot's in their world. Having once explained to a group of is it the wrong way?
No, closer, closer.
No, just closer.
Having once, what am I doing wrong?
Closer.
Yeah.
Closer?
There we go.
Really?
Yeah.
You want
There
me
you go.
that
Yeah.
much louder? Oh,
Awesome.
you're
There
not
we
going to
go.
come back from this one. Having once explained to a group of CXOs, and no one on that place could even spell IT, let alone know what a cloud was, that the applications were like the difference between a private plane or a, I don't know, charter flight, right? So it depends what you're moving when. If you really want to, because I think what you're doing is brilliant, but those are the people who make the decisions. So you're going to need some sort of explanation that makes sense to them of why they need this. And because they're IT people, dealing with IT an awful lot, have no idea how to explain it either. So I like the distributed sort of ledger here and the what's it there, but you're still talking in language they don't understand. So they're going to buy those planes and use the brilliant stuff that you're doing. Those are the people who end up making decisions, because I'll tell you now, in my experience, the head of IT won't be able to explain it to them either. So we'll ask the question again. In the simplest things possible, why is it brilliant?
Thank you for saying it is brilliant. Look, data is the biggest commodity on the earth, right? Every business is in data. Every business is involved in data, whether they like that or not. If they're making recorders, they're still dealing with data. And every company now, whether they like it or not, has to become a tech company to do that. But the tech systems, there are so many different choices, so many different development languages, different platforms, developer types. That's hard and time-consuming and expensive for any organization to build. And most platforms out there look at a single aspect. They're trying to solve a single aspect. Maybe it's improving how you can query a graph, or improving how you can query something in a performance perspective. With SurrealDB, we know that data is that commodity, but we want to simplify and reduce the amount of time that it takes for any company to become a tech company, or if they're already a tech company, to improve their processes as a tech company. And so for SurrealDB, it's about taking data, simplifying that process, and enabling companies to focus on what they should be focusing on, not the tech platforms that enable them to do that.
Thank you very much.
I just want to jump in the possible analogy, right? If you want to have a real case example. Look, you can have a car, right? We all have a car. I mean, most of us. If I want to go on a weekend with my girlfriend, I want to have a cabriolet, right? Because it's nice to have a cabriolet. But then if I want to go with the family in weekend, maybe I need a minibus. And I have friends moving to another house. I need to come with a truck. So imagine that I have a magical car, just one, that is able to handle all those three cases. That's what SurrealDB is.
Thanks so much, John. Sorry, everyone. We have to close it here, but I just want to say thank you so much for joining us in London and online around the world. I don't know about you, but I've had a great day. Thank you to everyone who's come in person. Thank you to Kelsey, to Jeff, aka Fireship, who's come for his amazing videos when we first launched and also joining us today. Thank you to our SurrealDB giveaway winners, Ronald, Bhosale, and Pratim as well for joining us. And thanks to everyone for making this day very special for us. We really appreciate it. We'll see you soon online and offline too. So thank you.